My name is Elizabeth Howe, and I'm the defense reporter for Connecting Vets. This story broke at the beginning of June, so it's a little old at this point, but it's still a significant concern, and there are still a lot of questions. So there was an outbreak of COVID-19 at Fort Benning. There was also one at Fort Gordon. These are the two installations in Georgia that receive a lot of the Army's new recruits. So of course, outbreaks at these installations are a huge reason for concern. The interesting thing is that the situation kind of, I don't want to say proved, but it really identified that COVID prevention measures in place might not make the cut. So this cohort of 640 recruits arrives at Fort Benning. COVID prevention measures say that they are tested for COVID-19, and then regardless of if they test positive or negative, they're put in a 2-week quarantine monitoring period. So this entire cohort is tested. 4 of them test positive, so they're isolated and treated for COVID-19. The remainder of them go through this 2-week quarantine and monitoring period. At the end of that 2-week monitoring period, they begin training operations. 8 days into training operations, one recruit reports to his chain of command saying that he has symptoms of COVID-19. They immediately test all 640 of the cohort again. And at that point, 22% of that cohort tested positive for COVID-19. Presumably, during that 2-week period, no new cases of COVID were identified. So within 8 days, this one recruit spread COVID-19 to 22% of this cohort. So there are a lot of questions, obviously. Where did this one recruit get it? Did he get it during that 2-week quarantine period when he wasn't supposed to be exposed to COVID-19? And if he did, how did that happen? How did it spread so quickly? How did it spread so far? How many of these people were asymptomatic? How many more are asymptomatic? So there are a lot of questions that kind of indicate that the prevention measures in place might not make the cut. Or they might. Out of those 142 that tested positive, none of them were hospitalized, no one showed severe symptoms. So what do we do about this? What is Fort Benning doing about this? It has been 2 weeks since this story broke. I've reached out to Fort Benning a few times trying to get more answers about how they're addressing this and haven't heard back. But it just indicates that what those entry points into the military are doing to prevent the spread of COVID-19 isn't as effective as we'd obviously want them to be. If we have 22% of a training cohort showing up COVID positive within a week of starting training. Again, haven't received a lot of answers about what Fort Benning might be doing to address these issues. The Army is very quickly catching up to the Navy with positive COVID-19 cases. That's not a competition that you want to be winning. Most of the Navy's COVID-19 cases were identified on the USS Theodore Roosevelt, that huge outbreak that garnered a lot of national media attention. And now the Army is catching up to the Navy. They are far exceeding the rate of positive COVID tests of every other branch. They're very quickly closing that gap. And a lot of those new COVID cases are coming from Fort Benning and Fort Gordon in these huge outbreaks at basic training operations. My name is Elizabeth Howe, and you can reach me on Twitter at ECBHowe.